final period that we have, a concept that I've been working on for a while, and that is a result of a lot of different input from a lot of different people, a lot of the mentors and people that I really look up to, and quite frankly call some of my heroes, over in Africa, where I've had the chance to work for about a decade now. And what I want to talk about is this concept of what comes after. How do we heard a lot about climate change, a lot about negative effects on ecosystems, not necessarily maybe the most uplifting positive message that you've heard throughout the semester. So I want to change gears a little bit today and talk about how we do try to maybe engineer hope and what that looks like in the context of our curriculum and applying some of the things that we do in this class as well. So I want to talk a little bit about this experience that I've done for about 10 years, taking students to Benin to work on service learning projects over there with several international and nationally recognized NGO partners in Benin in West Africa. But before I do, what are some of the perceptions you have in Africa? So what do you think, if you see a news article or you talk to somebody about sub-Saharan Africa, what are some of the images that just kind of spring to your mind immediately? So I don't want you to really think about it, just what springs to mind. So Jeremy, it looks like you have a reaction. So
Just hunger, hard to get water.
hunger, difficult to get water. Good. What else?
Also skinny kids.
Skinny kids, yeah. Yeah, lots of pictures.
Huts. Huts.
Huts, okay, yeah, huts, different living accommodations, good. What else?
Developing nation.
Developing nation? Mm-hmm. Good. Anything else? So I want to try and talk about that concept because much of that is accurate, and you're going to see some of the pictures from a village that we work with that looks a lot like that. But I also want to talk about this concept of sustainability and sustainable development. If we talk about sustainable development, we're actually providing the ability to leapfrog technology from where we are to having landlines that go into our house is kind of the classic example, to pretty much everybody in Africa has a cell phone, right? So I still have the landline in my house. Don't have that, don't need that infrastructure now. So in some ways we can leapfrog technology. So sustainable development we can actually accomplish in leaps, not small steps, which is pretty interesting concept if you think about it. So I want to talk about this concept of hope. How can we use innovative technology, new technology, to leapfrog some of the infrastructure investments and do sustainable development in a rapid process where we can really improve the lifestyles of folks. And you've talked about this probably before in some other classes, but the key concepts that we focus on, so myself and some other professors that I've worked with over the years have formed our own nonprofit organization, basically for tax purposes for donors. It doesn't really change what we do, but it provides a structure. And in order to do that, we had to really think about what we were going to tell people we do. And as we thought about that, we really wanted to concentrate on this idea of listening to needs, learning about a community's needs, and then looking at the limitations of technology, but also the benefits of technology to choose things that are effective in a given community. And they're going to vary from place to place, situation to situation. So the NGO, or nonprofit that we formed is called WATER, standing for West Africa Technology, Education, and Reciprocity, and it's Water for Africa. And the key thing here that I want to focus on today is this concept of reciprocity, because I feel really strongly about this, that I've gotten a lot more in the 10 years from the communities that I've worked with than I can hope to repay on their end. Oftentimes I think we think about charity and we think about giving and we think about the act of the giver, whoever that is, whether it's education, money, that's a one-way transaction. And I'd like to challenge your concept about that maybe that's not the case and maybe that's not even a good model. Maybe we think more about this concept of reciprocity as well. So we've been really focused in particular on sustainable development in the context of water development, like we said over here, and the resulting health impacts associated with clean water, which we've talked about throughout this course in some ways. So here you see a couple different vials, and if you did this in your freshman class, you recognize these. You maybe haven't done that, but the gold vial is just from the color of the chemicals that are put in the water. So we have some chemicals that we put in the water to test for bacteria in the water, and when you put them initially in the water, it turns that gold color. And if the water's clean, it'll stay that gold color. You can tell the other vial, which is from a well in Benin, in an urban area in Benin, one of the capital cities in Benin, is black. And the nice thing about this chemical experiment, we usually have negative connotations with black. So this reinforces, that color reinforces the actual negative connotations of the bacteria in that water, which are going to cause disease. And worldwide, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, in terms of numbers, it's over 4,000, and this is just children, every day. So if we think about 9/11 happening every day to kids, that's the order of magnitude of this issue in the world. And what really makes me angry, and I'll try not to swear today, I'm not always successful, but what really makes me angry is that this is a curable problem. We as engineers, we have the technology, we have the education, and we have the means economically to prevent these deaths, quite frankly. So it's a matter of figuring out what are the reasons that we don't. And there are challenges, and those challenges are often social, they're often transportation. There are some economic challenges as well. So figuring out how to do that is really the key. And again, I would submit that it's really situational. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer. It's really learning, working with the community, learning their needs, and then applying your education and the technology that you're aware of to meet a specific need. And that's why it becomes difficult, because different things work in different communities. So it takes time. You actually have to go and learn about the community, learn about their needs, learn about this problem at a local level before we can really implement things and deal with these devastating numbers. So we've been working in Benin. Why? I started in 2002 at Gonzaga University. Students were interested in a project. An organization called Engineers Without Borders was just starting at that time. I found out about that, gave them a call, said, well, we might have a project in Benin your students could work on. And I said, let's see, I think that's in like Middle East somewhere. So I did what everyone does, went to Google and said, oh, no, I was way wrong. Right. So Benin's in West Africa. It's a former communist country in West Africa, transitioned about 30 years ago now to somewhat democratic government. But it's safe, it's stable, it's French-speaking. So because it's French-speaking in this country, we hear very little about it because they don't do their news in the same language we do our news in. So it's literally kind of off the beaten path in more ways than one. But if we look where it is in that area, it's subtropical, meaning in many cases in that part of Africa, in Benin, quantity of water isn't the issue. Okay? So this is actually a village that's built in the middle of the lake, and they got plenty of water. So what are the issues then with the water in this community? You can look at the picture and just try to think what might be happening here. What are going to be the water issues here? Water quality, that's right. Why? Okay, so it might be the means to clean it, the technology to clean the water. What else?
They're just pumping that through with the water hose.
They're pumping it through with a water hose? Mm-hmm.
So they're good.
So this is actually out of a deep well. So this water is probably close to potable. It's actually pretty clean because a USAID organization came in and put a well in this village, a deep well, below the surface water table here. But if that well weren't there, if they were drinking from the surface water, which is the state in most villages, what would be the issue with the water quality here? So it's a little bit of a teaser picture. I'm glad you caught that and asked that question. Sarah, I think you talked about huts, right? So if you think about a hut, how many rooms are in a hut? One. What is it missing? Say that again? Right. The bathroom becomes the outdoor bathroom, right? And if we have animals in this village which kind of roam openly, they're also going to be defecating in the open soil. It rains, that rain carries the bacteria directly into the water. And this is the case throughout much of Benin, and many of the wells are shallow hand-dug wells in Benin. So they're contaminated with that rainfall and runoff from either animals or from human waste, due in part to the lack of sanitation. Now, so if we want to put a well in a community, so we've got bad water, we may have water there, but the water quality isn't so good. So if we want to put a well, and I'm going to talk about that technology today, we want to put a well in a community, what do we need to operate a well? We just wish for a well, wishing well? What do we do to implement a well in a community? What does a community need? Labor to dig a deep hole, yes. What else? A pump. I think I heard somebody say a pump, right? Okay. What about the pump? Can we just wish for a pump? So a human-powered pump could work. Solar-powered, okay. So it has to have some power to it. So we can use human power. If we don't want to use human power, and the reason we might not want to use human power is it's pretty well documented in the literature that human-powered wells often don't provide an adequate amount of water for a community because of the amount of energy, time and energy that people have to put into it. So we could go to a solar power pump. So now what do we need for a solar power pump? Money for the material, which would be the solar panels and the pump, right? Okay. So you've got that, right? That's pretty intuitive. You can work your way through that. You don't have to probably have a course in that specifically. But while you all could figure that out, in many cases, mistakes have been made where people would go into a village, put in a well, put in a pump, say, congratulations, you have water, fire up the gasoline and the engine for the generator for the pump, and say goodbye. Right. What's the problem with that? They don't have gas, the generator can break, right? So that's the issue. So while we have concentrated on water and health, we actually had to work with this community. It's called Zoungbomey. And Zoungbomey literally translates to in the big forest. So that kind of gives you an idea that it's not on the main road. This particular community made most of their money through a women's cooperative by harvesting palm berries. And you can see them there. They have kind of this outside shell, and then inside is this kind of acorny type material. And the way they generated the palm oil was to put it in a big concrete-looking bathtub over there and then mash it with their feet. What's the problem with that? Feet are dirty, and thus the palm oil gets dirty, so then they can't sell it for as much in the marketplace. So they'll take this palm oil to the local market, try and sell it, but their palm oil sold for much less than other communities that used a more modern technique to separate the oil from the palm berries. So a while ago, we began to work first with this community. Again, even though our emphasis on water and health, we began to work first with this community on economic development because they said that's what they needed at the time. They needed the ability to be able to transfer those palm oil from the traditional foot method, which leads to health issues for the people who are trying to break down those berries, but also decrease the value of the palm oil, to working with a couple NGOs here. So we worked with a local NGO called the Songhai Center, which actually made the green equipment, and that's their truck, that the equipment's on there. We worked with another organization, Landry and Roland. There in the picture, Roland's in the blue hat, Landry's in the black and white shirt. And Landry worked with this community sometime to set up a women's cooperative to teach them how to do the basic accounting, to do inventory for palm oil, so that they could be set up to have equipment brought in to manufacture palm oil using machines to keep the bacteria out of the palm oil they were making. So we started off on that process for economic development, and a few years ago, I think in 2011, we were able to bring this palm oil processing equipment to the village, and they were able to begin processing the palm oil and make enough money to begin to send their kids to school, which they couldn't do prior to this time, and actually provide a savings account within the community to be able to use that savings for medical care, to go to the doctor, which they couldn't afford for their kids or for themselves prior to having this additional income in the community. Also, when they had this additional income, you can see here they're filling up, those are probably about 3 to 500 gallon containers. They put the palm oil in there to separate the oil from all the other material, but in order to do the separation, they also have to add water as part of that process, and they heat up that water. You'll see that here in a little bit. I'll show you a little more how this is done in order to get the palm oil out. And at the time we put this in, the women's cooperative were amazingly happy. It was just a wonderful day. They were really ecstatic after walking a mile, about 10 of them filling up probably 300 or 400 gallons of water, walking a mile each way to get that, about 7 gallons at a time. It took a long time. They very quickly realized it would be nice to have water nearby. So we began working on this next phase of the project after doing the economic development, beginning to work on the next phase, which was to invest in the technology now that they had some economic means to be able to adapt a well in this community to provide water for the palm oil separation, but also for the first time water that would be easily available in this water as well. So we really focused on listening to what the community's needs are and working on their timeline in order to adapt that. So I'm going to break here and go to a short video.